Can you beat Paper Mario 64 without action commands? Hey there guys, NovemberJoy here, and welcome to the Reptile Rumble. This is a challenge that I did quite a while ago, and I just never turned it into a video until now. As a result, someone else technically beat me to this one. Arantula pretty much only does challenges on this series and Bug Fables, so you should share the love with him if you like this kind of content. Alright, with that out of the way, Paper Mario is a game I really enjoyed as a kid, even if I didn't finish it back then, and one of its defining features is RPG combat, where you actually have to pay attention and press buttons with good timing. But what happens if Mario doesn't bring his A game? What if Mario only uses the bare minimum of effort and never pushes any buttons he doesn't have to? That's what I'm here to find out. Can you beat Paper Mario without action commands? The rules for this one are pretty simple. Not once will we be allowed to perform any action command. This includes blocking most forms of attack from Mario and his partners, and running away. When the game gives us any kind of prompt during battle, we just have to sit there and see what happens. As for optional challenges, I have one this time. Beat the master and get his diploma. I know this will definitely be possible, but I want to see how much of a challenge it really is. Now, with the rules out of the way, let's jump into the run. Something weird about the first Paper Mario game is that its main defining feature, action commands, aren't even available at the start of the game. As a result, there isn't much interesting to talk about during the prologue. Let's just summarize it. Try to fight Bowser, become Kentucky Fried Mario, get enlightened by the power of the cosmos, beat up a child, jump all over two Goombas, and then destroy the Goomba King with nuts. Yeah, one of this game's flaws is definitely its slow start. Once we're past that, we just have a few cutscenes in our way before we get our hands on the Lucky Star, which unlocks action commands. This is where the challenge really starts. Thankfully, Twink is understanding and won't force us to do his tutorial, unlike some people I've dealt with in the past. We do have a fight right afterwards that shows us just how much weaker we are without action commands though. A single Magikoopa was enough to take us into danger. That might be a bad sign. The first chapter proves to be more challenging than expected. Not being able to block means your HP drains quickly, and not being able to attack properly makes fights last longer and gives enemies more opportunities to hit you. Once I got to Koopa Village, I had a required fight with 4 fuzzies, and I burned a fire flower to toast them all. I didn't have any other good way to hit them all at once. Don't worry, I did try Cooper. Let's just say he's not going to be very useful for this run. Items are going to be a very important part of this run. They're my best way of dealing damage since they usually hit everything and deal way more damage than anything else I can use, especially in the early game. But I'm limited on how many I can carry, so I need to avoid using them, sometimes by running away. Most of the enemies inside the fortress aren't a problem, but bombs aren't a threat if I just use my partner as a shield. A little more fortress exploration later, we're all the way up to the first real boss of the game, Bowser. Yeah, not really, but this did make for an interesting fight. With Hammer Charge, I can get past his defense point and one-shot him, but that's only the first phase. In the second phase, we have to actually fight the Koopa brothers, and I found out that knocking them over depends on your attack power. As a result, they ended up taking me out the first time. 4 damage is a lot this early in the game. On the second attempt, I tried using an item. That worked well, and then I finished it easily with 2 more items. Can you tell we're going to be reliant on items yet? With that, Chapter 1 is complete, and we finally get access to star powers. They're going to be very useful because they don't rely on any action commands to work. Before I got to start Chapter 2, I had to beat up the child again, and I also did an optional blooper fight, which got me Shrink Stomp, a badge that could be useful later. Once we start Chapter 2, the enemies here are strong enough that we burn through most of our HP and FP from just a couple of battles, so I fight the ones I can and spin past the rest. As I got a new partner, I decided to experiment with his moves. Parakarry's Shell Shot is really weird in this challenge. The aiming cursor never appears, so he just flies in a random direction if you don't push anything. You can probably hit something with it, but I didn't try it again. Along the way, I decided to try fighting Buzzer. He's optional to fight, but I wanted to see how I would do. With 40 HP, this was going to be a test of endurance. His grab attack will never fail, since we can't mash A, so that's 4 HP of damage when that hits. And his wind attack deals 3 damage to both Mario and his current partner. Not so bad for Mario, but partners lose turns when they take damage. That's a lot of turns to lose, and it makes our already low damage potential even worse. I also went into the fight underprepared. I should have brought more attack items because they help a lot. Somehow, Shrink Stomp became our saving grace for this fight. Not only does it lower the damage we take, but it also prevents Buzzar from using his grab or wind attacks. With that in mind, I did eventually win, but it was closer than I thought. Maybe I should have just told him I was Luigi. I'm being lazy enough, he'd probably believe it. Entering the Dry Desert, the Dry enemies give me lots of Dry damage. Thankfully, they're not too hard to dodge, and there weren't too many Dry obstacles on the way to finding Dry Ruins. Inside, we have our first encounter with status effects. They suck in this run because we're almost guaranteed to get hit by them when we don't block any attacks. Poison isn't so bad since it's only 1 damage per turn, but it's still more damage that we can't do anything about right now. Safe to say, dodging enemies is even more important in here than ever. So we know that endurance is our biggest issue and we need to dodge enemies. Too bad there's this trap room where we have to fall for the trap and lock ourselves in. The only way to get through this trap is to fight 3 enemy groups in a row. That was a puzzle of endurance until I realized the true power of first strikes. Some partners can strike enemies with their field actions, like Cooper, and Bombette. And if you first strike an enemy with Bombette's explosion, it starts the fight with her bomb move without using any FP, and more importantly for us, without any action commands. Dealing 5 damage without any cost or charge time is immense for us, and it gives us just the edge we need to get through. Of course, it didn't stop me from getting annihilated by this huge group of Buzzy Beetles afterwards and having to do the trap room again. The rest of the ruins were done without issue, up to the next boss, Totem Koopa. He has very low HP and attack, so the only things I was worried about were his chomps and his magic that injures your partner. He went down very quickly though, and that brought Chapter 2 to a close. A little harder than the first one, but nothing too spicy. During an intermission, we play Metal Gear Peach and learn all about Tubba Blubba's addiction to booze. Once we get to Chapter 3 proper, the enemies in Forever Forest are a problem. The fuzzies jump around erratically and clone themselves, and the piranha plants show up in front of you to catch you off guard while dealing high damage. You'd think I could just run away, but that's not reliable, and Lullaby isn't that reliable against these enemies either, so I died once before getting through to Boo Mansion. Nothing too important happens in there besides meeting the source of Tubba Blubba's addiction. And no, this section does not count as an action command because it's not in a fight. Inside Tubba's mansion, we didn't really have much of a problem because the main enemies there were vulnerable to Lullaby. I abused all the things I learned up to this point to grab the key and run back to the windmill, where we have to face off against Tubba's heart. A very awkward fight for this run. Bo does almost no damage, so it seems like a good idea to swap her out when Tubba isn't preparing his super move, but we need her to use out of sight when he is. His regular attack's pretty strong too, so we're not in the clear just from being able to avoid his super move. I was very reliant on Refresh keeping my FP up, but I was able to deal enough damage to scare him away. We do have to fight Tubba Blubba's body afterwards, but he only has 10 HP, so he went down fast. With that, we take Tubba Blubba to rehab and finish Chapter 3. I made sure Peach told the truth during her intermission, don't worry. Up next was the most surprising roadblock of the entire run, the third fight with Junior Troopa. He's a very simple opponent. He has defense, he has high HP, he has flight, and he hits us hard every single turn. It took me several tries to figure out a very strange solution. I used Shrink Stomp to halve his attack power so he dealt 2 damage to me. When I had exactly 1 HP left, I get +4 attack power with Mega Rush, so that's very important. Then, I used healing items and Refresh to stall for time while Goombario sat in the back charging the entire fight. It took a few tries because Shrink Stomp only has a 50% chance to work. Once Goombario's charged up enough, we get to watch him go flying and completely obliterate this child. Man, I never expected Junior Troopa to be that hard. As we enter Chapter 4, we find that Shy Guys have stolen everything that wasn't nailed down, stolen the nails, and then stole what was nailed down. This chapter involves a lot of backtracking and grabbing items, so I'll just skip to the important parts. Starstorm is expensive but shreds most enemy groups we encounter here. Groove Guys are from hell, and they will infinitely stun lock you with dizziness if you let them get a turn in this challenge. Defend Plus is one of the best badges for this challenge, and once we give this guy a cake and he ascends to the heavens, we get the cookbook, which lets us break the game with overpowered recipes. In here, I encountered the most difficult boss of the game, and I defeated him with a strategy so complicated I literally can't explain it. Along the way, we have to fight the Big Lantern Ghost, whose fight is one huge gimmick. The room is dark, so you can't target him unless you hit his lantern first. Without action commands, we can only hit the lantern once per attack, so we're very slow at actually lighting the lantern. That gives him more time to blow it out, and more time to use his lantern shine attack to injure our partner. It's only once or twice per attack cycle that we have enough light to hit him, so this one's just about surviving his attacks. With the power of Defend Plus, Refresh actually keeps me alive long enough to deal the finishing blow. Then, I decided to fight Anti-Guy before I finished the chapter. I would describe some huge strategy here, but I really didn't have one besides hoping for his lower damage attack. From there, I just kept myself alive with Sweet Shrooms and Life Shrooms until I dealt the final blow. It only took a few tries, and then the only thing in my way was General Guy. He generally did a really bad job fighting me. His first unit can't hurt us at all because we have Defend Plus equipped, and his other units aren't a major threat either. Once I took out the light bulb, he was pretty much done for, and that's how I beat Chapter 4. Peach tried to kill this fat guy by making him a soap cake with extra soap, but sadly he spat it out before it did any real damage. One boss fight that's barely even a boss fight later, we move on to Chapter 5. There was one thing I had to do before setting foot on Lava Lava Island. Grab Zap Tap. Without it, Jungle Fuzzies are demons that deal huge damage, heal, and clone themselves. With it, they're free star points. After saving the Yoshis from the consequences of their own actions and exploring the jungle, we get the Ultrastone. This lets us rank up our partners a second time for a fourth move and better attack power. Some partners benefit from this more than others. Surprisingly, things don't heat up inside Mount Lava Lava. There are a lot of ways to deal with fiery enemies in this game, especially now that we have Sushi. Once we get to Lava Piranha, thankfully, we prepared beforehand. With our badge setup, we have 2 defense against all his attacks. Mario and Parakarry together can chew through his HP with relative ease, because ultra-ranked Parakarry, for some reason, has more attack power than any other partner. Once we reach the second phase, we use Snowman Dolls and Sushi Squirt to stun and destroy the boss in record time. That's the end of Chapter 5, a very easy chapter indeed. Perhaps we'll find something more challenging in Chapter 6. We do have to annihilate the child again, but he's easier than ever with only 20 HP. Meanwhile, Peach plays Deal or No Deal. Thankfully she survives, but she only gets the consolation prize. Flower Fields is a weird place. Some of the enemies deal a lot of damage and are hard to avoid, but none of them are insurmountable. Because Feeling Fine protects us from sleep, the only enemies here I was afraid of were Amazy Daisies with their 20 attack power. This chapter also involves a lot of running around and grabbing items. Let's just skip ahead to our final partner, Lackluster. He's normally pretty lackluster, but he is impressively useless in this challenge. His main attack requires you to aim with a cursor, and if it's not over the enemy, he doesn't just miss the action command and do less damage, he misses completely and does no damage. And as for Spiny Surge, he won't even attempt to throw a single Spiny if you don't touch the stick. He just moves forward and then backs away after a few seconds. Sorry, Michael, you kinda suck. Once we're past that, we do a little vandalism, and we're up to a boss I was dreading since I started this run, Huff and Puff. His gimmick is that he spawns Tough Puffs every time you hit him, 1 for every point of damage you deal to him. The fight revolves heavily around crowd control and dealing with them. They can deal significant damage, or be eaten by Huff and Puff to recover his HP, if you leave them alive. These things are a problem if you're playing casually, and they're only magnified in this run. The healing is annoying since we deal less damage in the first place, but the attacking is the part we need to worry most about. Do you remember the Jungle Fuzzies from Chapter 5 and how Zap Tap was so helpful against their 5-hit attacks? Tough Puffs are similar with two differences. They are immune to Zap Tap, and they hit 20 times per attack instead of 5. If I let them hit me at all, they'll deal 20 damage even with Defend Plus, and that's way too much damage to deal with. We do have one useful tool to help though. Chill Out, the star move we got from Chapter 4, lowers enemy attack power, and it lowers the attack power of Huff and Puff and any Tough Puffs he spawns for a few turns. By itself, that's enough to protect us from the lethal 20-hit grab attack. I just need to keep Chill Out active or make sure Mario can't be hit every single turn. Keep in mind, I still have to fight Huff and Puff and actually defeat him at some point while keeping myself alive. I had a hard time keeping all these things balanced at once, and the biggest problem was actually my star energy. We only have 5 units of star energy, Chill Out costs 2, and we have no easy way to get it back without wasting turns focusing. That, and I didn't prepare properly. I brought Thunder Rages, not knowing that Huff and Puff and his minions are immune to electric damage. My successful attempt at this fight was 20 minutes of whittling him down, spacing out my items as far as possible. Turns out Parakarry's Air Raid, which is costly and not that good, is our best multi-target move that isn't powered by star energy or items. Eventually I lowered his HP enough to make the final push. One charged head bonk and one star storm spells the end of this rejected Captain Planet villain. Okay, that was a pretty cool fight that made me use my tools and think a little, and it's also the end of Chapter 6. We get one more Metal Gear Peach section where she gets caught again, and she's the worst stealth operative ever. During my pre-chapter prep, I murdered Totem Koopa. We can't flip him over, but we can put him to sleep and charge for dozens of turns to brute force our way past his defense. Speaking of optional bosses, I think it's time we take on the dojo. Chin, Lee, and even the Master's first form are no problem by this point because we're pretty strong. And yes, I did forget to get Power Rush and Last Stand from this chest until pre-chapter 7. I could have gotten these earlier, but I was mostly fine without them. The Master's second form is a little tougher, but we can stop his multi-hit attacks by wearing Zap Tap and slowly wear him down. Finally, we have his third form, where he goes Super Saiyan and yells at us for being a foolish novice every time we fail our action command against him. That didn't stop this fight from being the most hilarious of the entire run though, because he just couldn't hit me at all. Of course, he did hit me a couple times, but I spent literally half this fight in danger waiting for him to take me out, and he just never did. I'm just gonna assume it was all karma for how overconfident he was. I'll admit that was an insanely lucky victory, but that is still one optional challenge complete. A little sewer exploration and 2 forgettable blooper bosses later, we successfully start Chapter 7. It starts with the world's dumbest murder mystery. Dumbest because nobody thought to check if the victim was alive before declaring a murder mystery. We also have yet another fight with Junior Troopa, but he can't do much before we defeat him. He froze to death, so I bet we'll never see him again. Wait, does that mean we killed a child? In the snowy wilds, we have a fight with Monstar ahead of us. I'm going to let this attack speak for itself. On our way through the rest of the wilds and the Crystal Palace, there aren't any major challenges. Enemies like White Magic Koopas and Dupla Ghosts are annoying because of their high HP totals, but far from insurmountable. Throughout the Crystal King fight, I was very thankful that Feeling Fine blocks freeze, otherwise I would have spent the whole fight praying to never get frozen. Without his main status effect, he's pretty much powerless against us, and we shatter him without much trouble. Chapter 7 was a bit of a cakewalk with how strong we are, but we still have one more challenge ahead of us. As we start Chapter 8, Bowser's Castle is very long, so I'll skip through most of it. At this point, I tried to avoid fights. The enemies in here can put up a pretty good fight against our crippled offense and defense, and we're leveled high enough that we don't gain much from further leveling. Koopa Trolls were still easy to fight though, because I could stun lock them with Power Quake. Now, there's one thing you guys might be wondering. How did I handle the anti-guy unit? Well, I kinda took the cheap way out. I spent 3 turns triple dipping shooting stars. Each one deals 6 damage, and using 9 adds up to 54, more than the 50 HP each anti-guy has. I really wish I'd tried to fight them normally, but I still beat them in the end. Later, the Koopa brothers return for round 2. This might be oh, wait, Egg Boy's back. It's probably best not to ask how he survived his snowy grave. He went down pretty easily though. I had enough attack power and HP to deal with anything he could throw at me by this point, even with him cycling through all his forms. Now all we have left is Bowser, the real one that's not made out of cardboard this time. First, we fight him in the hallway. He's really easy in this fight since he only has 50 HP. Of course, that was just a warm-up. Next up is the real final fight. The first phase is unwinnable, but we can deal a little damage before the cutscenes kick in. Bowser puts up a good final fight. He's got a lot of attacks to use, and we have to keep wasting turns to take down his star shield every time he puts it up. There's a lot of things he can do to us, where the worst one is probably him taking one of our commands. If he takes the wrong command at the wrong time, it'd be terrible. Thankfully, I got lucky and it never hurt me too much. His Star Wave attack also tries to hit our partner, so we need to have Chill Out active or be invisible to not lose our partner for 3 turns. Even with all this, I managed to make his fight relatively short by exploiting his AI. He can heal himself for 30 HP 3 times during the fight, but he won't heal unless you're at least 25% healthier than he is. How can he tell? By staying at low HP, he'll never heal himself and we can finish him for the win. So we got back to Star Rod, Peach gives a little speech, and credits roll. This challenge is officially complete. I also cleared my optional challenge, even if it was easier than I was expecting. Honestly, this challenge was a lot easier than I was expecting. The hardest parts were near the beginning, and I got enough tools later on to easily make up for my lack of action commands. My favorite fights were the 3rd Junior Troopa fight and Huff and Puff. Those were the ones where I actually had to use strategy. If I do end up playing other Paper Mario games with challenges, I'm gonna have to put more restrictions on so I get a greater challenge. And play them beforehand because this was my first time actually beating this game. Anyway, let's give Mario a little space to enjoy Peach's special cake, made with extra soap. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Check those cards for more weird challenges like this, and power smash that subscribe button for more cool content. Until then, I'll see you guys next time on the Reptile Rumble.